And hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. Today is VD, Valentine's Day. Yes, that's what it is. February 14th, 2021. I'm your host this week, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me, Jim Barrows. How are you, Jim?
Hello. Oh, not too bad for a way too cold for Texas kind of day.
Yeah, it's really weird. We're dealing with an unusual winter storm. Earlier this season, when it snowed, I took pictures and I showed people, hey, this happens in Austin once every 3 or 4 years. And now it looks like it's happening right now because I just went out and walked in the snow. And it's going to happen Monday and probably Wednesday. And I think the high today is like 24 or something.
Yeah.
So we're under zero for the sea people.
It is not good because nobody here knows how to drive, and Texas doesn't have any way to mitigate the ice and snow on the roads. So we're pretty well screwed.
There's no salt trucks. There's no plows. Not that we're going to get enough snow to plow. We're never going to get enough snow to plow here. So it would be a waste of money for the city to do that. But it's also a waste of money for the city to keep and maintain salt trucks for something that happens once every 10, 15 years. It's easier for the city to just shut down. And so that's what we're doing. Fortunately, I have food and water, and I still have electricity. My water hoses are frozen, which was funny. But welcome, everybody. You're on with me and Jim. We got a handful of announcements to get out of the way first. If you are watching us live on YouTube, directly up above the chat, there's a donate link. And because we are a nonprofit organization, YouTube and Google don't take anything at all out of it, which means everything that you donate goes directly to the ACA and is used for this program and all of our other programs and contents. We appreciate everybody's support. And if you're able to, please donate there. You can also pick yourself up some merchandise by going to bit.ly/AEN merch. You can become a member on YouTube for as little as 99 cents a month, and then you can earn various emojis and other things. Also, the patreon.com/the Atheist Experience is available as yet another regular way to support us. And if you want to interact, in addition to the ACA Discord, there are a couple of Facebook pages that we've been promoting lately to make sure people go to. These are the new ones. And that is the Atheist Experience fan group, which is groups/AXP FG, and then the Atheist Experience private fan group, which is group/AXP PFG. And I will skip all the jokes about the private group. But in addition to this program, I hope that you've also been able to watch Truth Wanted on Fridays, Secular Sexuality on Thursdays, Talk Heathen on Sunday mornings, and Nonprofits in between Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience. New hosts, new segments, lots going on. We couldn't do any of this if it weren't for the amazing crew that we keep. Oh, look, somebody's drinking. I'm pretty sure that's not orange soda. I think that is the blood of something from World of Warcraft. But I'm going to just stay on. Oh, no, I wanted to stay on there to see just how much Puck could actually drink. I am here today as a new, once again, puppy owner. And so my buddy, so here, the short version, and we'll get to the show because it's not relevant. I've been thinking about getting a puppy, but my life doesn't actually allow for it when I'm traveling around. But I found this little guy, and because I'm stuck here with COVID and because I have some friends who can help out, he's 5 months old. He's not yet house trained, which means I fully expect that 20 minutes into the show, he's sitting around right over here somewhere. I will smell poop and have to go clean it up. But we're working on it. He's super sweet. I've had almost no sleep. He and I just crash on the couch for like 2 or 3 hours at a time at most. And sometimes I wake him up to take him out just to pee, but he's absolutely adorable and sweet. And so if there are any disruptions, or just like he's tried to take down the green screen already today, any disruptions today, please bear with me, and Jim will be here to take over in the drop of a hat.
And I might be laughing too hard to do that, but we'll see how it goes.
If I have to scramble through a green screen so that everybody can see what's behind it to scoop up poop, and Jim falls out of his chair, just please be patient. We'll get it all back and working soon.
Our technical difficulties have 4 legs and teeth.
Yeah, but they're so sweet.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He already found a pair of shoes that I haven't seen in 5 years.
Yep.
Because they were underneath the dresser. But, thanks, buddy. All right. So with all of the announcements and other stuff out of the way, welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm not going to go into detail on anything that's happened over the last week. I'm not going to start any kind of ranty stuff. I just want to get the calls and find out what people have to say about what they believe and why, and what help we can potentially offer, or where we agree and where we disagree. You ready to go, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got a preference for where we start?
Reincarnation 14 looks kind of interesting.
Ooh, I don't. Oh, there we go. Sarah in Oregon, you are on with Jim and Matt. How are you? And how can we help?
Oh, boy, I have so much I could talk to you about, Matt, because I'm a big fan. And I want to thank you, first of all, for what you're doing, because I really hate religion, and I think it's far more destructive than it is helpful. And I think it's behind what we call the culture war. But
well, thanks.
I also did say that I'm an atheist, but I believe in, well, reincarnation is kind of an unfortunate word, but I think I've been here before.
So I guess the best thing to do is to tell us what you mean by that and why. Tell us what you believe and why. So what is it about reincarnation that you believe and why?
Well, I'll try not to make this a long story. I've been a pretty hardcore atheist, anti-theist, pretty much since I was 14. And in about 1974, I'm 68, so I'm not young, I got into Scientology, which I'm out of for a long time. But as part of their counseling, you're hooked up to this thing called the e-meter. I think you've probably heard of that, right?
Yeah, it's a couple of cans with some wire that goes in to bullshit people into thinking that they're actually testing for something.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's an ohm meter is all it is, and it passes a current from one hand to the other. And when you have a thought that has any kind of emotional charge to it, you get a specific read on this meter. It's actually fairly sensitive. And in sort of tracking down what I felt,
I'm curious. Yeah, you say it's an O-meter. Have you actually grabbed an O-meter and changed your thoughts to see what happens with a real O-meter, and a good one like a Fluke or something like that?
No, but when I was in Scientology, I had an e-meter, and I messed with it.
But what you're saying doesn't work.
Really can do with it.
It doesn't work. If you get a good ohm meter, like a Fluke or something else, and you grab the leads and try to change your thoughts, you will not change your resistance.
Yeah, well, I don't know how it works technically. It may just be that you have a certain thought and you squeeze your hands a little harder. Anyway, they track me down. They always ask when you're going down painful incidents, is there an early similar incident? And I got down to birth, which I'm not sure I actually even remembered any of, but it was interesting. And then they said earlier similar, and I got this image of myself as somebody else. I immediately knew who it was and exactly who I was with and what I was doing. And subsequently, since they were in the family, I looked up a bunch of stuff that I had never seen before in an old trunk of my mother's, and it turned out to be a very emotional experience. And I should say that I'm pretty skeptical about everything, and this is a pretty half-hearted belief, but it's also pretty convincing, just because of how I feel about certain periods of time and certain things that I know about my family that I have no way of knowing.
You had this experience. How did you determine that the experience is based on something real and not just something your brain was? What was the process you walked through on that?
Just the response of the counselor who was looking at the e-meter, and she kept saying, "What's that?" Meaning.
Okay, so I don't care about the e-meter. Stop mentioning the e-meter because it's complete BS. From the beginning, there is no science behind it. There's nothing behind it other than it is just a tool to hook gullible people. There's nothing to it. So I don't care what the e-meter says. E-meter's bullshit. What was the rest of the process other than the e-meter? Was there anything you did to actually prove that the experience was based on reality?
I'm here. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Is there, other than the e-meter, what else was there? Because I'm not going to take anything the e-meter says as anywhere close to reality. So other than the e-meter, what else did you do to prove that your experience was real?
Well, I went through some old pictures and letters that were, just looking at them, I had a lot of emotional reaction to them.
So that's all you have. And just, you went through a bunch of old letters. Old letters from who and where?
Well, from the person that I think I was before.
Okay, so how old were these letters, and how do you know you haven't seen them before or heard them talked about before?
Well, because I think I would remember that, unless it was before I was about age 4.
Well, so here's kind of the problem. People can build memories from things that are suggested to them and from things that never ever happened, and they become firmly convinced those memories are real when they aren't. And so how did you go about assuring yourself that what your brain was doing was putting together something from, we've all seen old-timey photos, we've all seen old-timey houses, we've all seen, a certain set of things that when you put it together with a narrative, you could then conclude that this was in fact the case. So other than your own experience, what did you use to get to the reality of the situation?
Well, that's it. I don't have anything else. That's it.
Oh, okay. So why should we take anything what you're saying as to be true?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why you should believe it, let alone why anybody else should believe it. Because if I had experiences and the only thing that I had to do to judge it was kind of my impressions or how I felt, rather than some actual evidence or data, my position would be, I don't yet know what the best explanation for this is. I couldn't possibly look at something like this and say, oh, well, the best explanation is that I was reincarnated. Because we have no evidence that that can ever occur, but we have mountains of evidence that your brain can make shit up. So if you don't have a way to tell the difference between the two, why would you ever believe that reincarnation is the best explanation?
Well, I don't know if it's the best explanation.
How do you know it's an explanation at all? How do you know it's a valid explanation?
I usually describe this to people as something I like to believe.
Well, why would you? Well, okay. Now this is frustrating, and I apologize in advance. But why the fuck would you believe the things you like to believe? And why would you call into a show to say, "I have no evidence for this. I believe in it, and I only believe in it because I like to"?
Well, because I wanted to talk to you.
Well, I don't want to talk to someone who just wants to call into the show to say, here, let me tell you what I believe and why. I believe in reincarnation, and the reason is because I like to believe it. Well, congratulations. But that has nothing to do with reality or truth or justification or reasonableness or anything. Hell, you might as well just say, I believe that aliens abduct me and replace me every single night because that's what I like to believe. But that's absolutely useless for a show that's about discussing the why part.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Well, thank you anyway. I want to thank you for your stance on trans people, being a trans person, and especially for how you really shut down Dinesh D'Souza when he was trying to compare being trans to somebody who thought they were a toad.
Yeah, his frog shit was absolutely, I was so livid on stage, but yes. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you for that.
If you come up with something where you have a good reason for your belief to where you think that this would be compelling to somebody else or useful to somebody else, call us back. But if you're just, hey, here's what I believe because I like it. Well, I like to believe things that have good evidence. I don't like to believe things that don't have good evidence. So what somebody else likes to believe isn't really relevant.
Yeah, how did you have evidence for that, though?
Well, that's not our problem.
Books about it.
So you're asking, how could you have evidence for it? Which is an admission that you don't think it's even possible to have evidence for it, which is an admission that you don't even think there could ever be a reasonable justification for it. Now, you don't know that, but if you're convinced of that and you still believe it, and at least you're honest, I give you full marks for being honest, Sarah, that you believe this because you like to believe it. But my question now is, and you don't need to answer it now, but think about it. Why is it that you like to believe something for which you don't have good evidence outside of how you feel, and for which you don't even think there could be evidence. Why would you like to believe something like that?
Well, I don't fully discount my own personal experience because, of course, it's my own. It's not the same as listening to somebody else's. And I would take probably the same reaction that you do. And also there's the obvious thing of nobody likes the idea of never being again.
Well, tough.
I'm 68 and my heart's in bad shape.
I get it.
So there's that.
I'm not looking forward to not existing, although I understand I'm not going to experience not existing. So not existing isn't going to do me any harm.
It's kind of like being afraid of nothing. I realize that.
Kind of.
Because
it's a little more than that, I would say.
But
yeah. Anyway, Sarah, thanks so much for calling. Think about that. Maybe, if you get better reasons, cool. If not, keep being awesome in other respects.
Okay. Hey, how do I get an email to you? I sent one and I got two messages. One of them said that it didn't go through, but then another one said that someone would get back to me, which is kind of contradictory, but nobody ever got back to me. So I'm assuming the first one was right.
What email address did you use where someone said they'd get back to you? Because all right, so here, let's make this easy. If you want to email the show, the email address is tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to all the people behind the scenes. Justin's the primary person who answers those emails. We've had him on here as a guest before. There's no guarantee whether you email tv@atheist-community.org, or even if you email my own email address, sans.deity@gmail.com, there's no guarantee you're going to get an answer, because I have 1,500 unread emails right now, and that was after archiving 14,000 of them just a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot.
Well, maybe somebody connected you can read. I've been a musician for about 50 years, and a lot of my songs are about religion. And I thought maybe people who are non-believers might like to hear that. So there's a bunch of there's the Discord, there's the Facebook groups. Record some of them, share them with people in the community, and see what they think. Oh yeah, well I have them on the Bandcamp page. I've been making music for about 50 years, so I have it all online. Anyway, I don't want to take any more of your time because you have people to beat up on.
Yep. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. All right. Yeah, it's strange. So the Scientology link was, my immediate reaction was that, well, this isn't relevant. You're telling me you used to be a Scientologist, and that really has nothing to do with reincarnation, except that it kind of does, because the same people who would buy into that notion of Scientology are going to buy into reincarnation. Now, it's great that Sarah just acknowledges, hey, I believe it because I like it.
Yeah.
But man, I wish Sarah and everybody else could figure out that believing something, I don't even think that's possible. I think it's actually, I don't want to just say somebody's a liar, but I think they're lying to themselves as well, because you don't get to choose what you believe. So you don't get to say, I really wish that reincarnation was true, so I'm just going to believe it. You can be convinced for really bad reasons, but.
Yeah. And the e-meter thing is just ridiculous. You can, no matter how they explain it, you can do the same thing. Like I said, with a digital Micah, digital multimeter, grab the ends and do the exact same thing and see that it has nothing to do with your thought process whatsoever. There's just no way for what's going on in your brain to make it down through your rest of your nervous system to give you any kind of indication of what you're thinking. So,
yeah, I think one of the things is I'm not completely sure that the e-meter is the same as an O-meter. I've heard that, and I've also heard it denied. And the Scientologists are like, well, we're not going to tell you what our e-meters are, and anything you've heard about what they actually do, you're just wrong. You need to come in and get audited.
Right, and if they actually work, they could actually make quite a bit of money by grabbing their Nobel Peace Prize or it would be Peace Prize, be Nobel Prize in Science, and selling those things to actual real psychologists and psychiatrists. So, yeah, and they're not.
Yeah, it's just like the faith healers just seem to not be out there walking around to hospitals curing everybody. They just seem to be doing it on television where they can get donations. But
Well, I was on Twitter earlier this week, and someone was advertising for a faith healing, and I was like, "Hey, why don't you just send them to the hospital instead of going to this, remote location out in the middle of nowhere? Just go to a hospital and do it there. That'll be much more convincing to everybody that you can do what you say you can do."
yeah, I dare. Here, I'm going to start this so that somebody can clip it out and put up. Hi, I'm Matt Dillahunty from the Atheist Experience, and I double dog dare any faith healer to walk into St. Jude's Children's Hospital and start actually healing the kids without somebody trying to tip you or you trying to make a penny off of it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We've got Duke in Indiana. You are on with Matt and Jim. How are you, Duke?
I'm good. How are you doing, Matt? Jim?
That's a good name. My puppy's name is Hero, but I've met puppies whose names are Duke, but also people named Duke. And so it's kind of like you have a raw name, like Duke's coming for you.
It actually means leader.
Yeah.
And it's actually my middle name. I go by it, but my first name is Sheridan. Even more strange.
I like that too. All right. So
thank
maybe
you.
I'm on a name kick. How can we help today?
Well, I know you like to know what people believe and why, so let me start by saying that I was a true skeptic growing up, and quite an antagonistic one. That I started out pretty much as an atheist, but I had a personal experience when I was 17, and for lack of a better term, got saved. And I went to Bible college and devoted myself to studying, and unfortunately, the more I studied, the less I could reconcile the many problems with the Bible. But I'm still tentatively a theist, as it were. I believe that I have three things that kind of keep me attached that I would consider to be some evidence for me. I would say I kind of wanted to see how you felt about it. The first of which is it was kind of ironic that the turning point in my atheism to begin with was happened by way of Ouija board when I was 14 years old. I know you might laugh at that, but I had experience.
Well, I might, but I haven't yet. I will tell you that we have a good understanding of what's going on when people mess with Ouija boards, and anything like that with pendulums and all that, the ideomotor reflex.
I was going to say you're going to say the ideomotor reflex or effect. Yeah. And I understand that that's an explanation for it. It just doesn't gel with my experiences as far as
okay.
So
what did you do to prove to yourself that it was not an idiometric reflex? I don't think I said anyone there right. What did you do to prove to yourself it wasn't that?
Well, the idea, I guess, would be that subconsciously you're moving it and you're kind of having a conversation with yourself. Is how I understand it.
To an extent, you've got other people whose hands are on the doohickey, but the question is how did you determine it wasn't that it was something real?
Well, we need to know, were you alone doing this, or were you doing it with other people?
I was doing it with other people. My cousin and I primarily were doing it for a couple of years, and we were heavy into it. And like I said, remember, I was a skeptic, skeptic, and I was going into it. I was extremely, I used to make fun of it as we were doing it, and I couldn't explain it, and I didn't know how to explain it, but there was many times that things happened, and I'll just give you one time we tried to get my grandfather on there, and the so-called spirit that was on there that was so supposedly moving the board. When we asked about what his age, like he knew what his dog's name was, which is we both knew, and he knew some other facts. But when we asked him how old he was when he died, he said he was 65, which I thought he was 62, and my cousin thought he was 64. So we thought, well, there's something messed up here. And it turns out, I didn't find out for a month later that he actually was 65.
Okay, so how does that prove that it's not, again, how do you prove that it's not that idiometric reflex? How did you actually make that determination? Because getting things right or wrong and questions based on what you think is not going to work. It doesn't really work.
Sure, but aren't you
So-
asking me to prove a negative in that particular?
There's nothing, Duke, stop. There's nothing wrong with proving a negative. We do it all the time. The only thing, this whole
Sure,
you
I
can't prove a
understand.
negative. We prove negatives every day, all day long. The only thing that you can't necessarily
I agree
do
with
is
that.
prove a universal negative. And so what we're asking is the test process. Now, you and your cousin sit down and you grab a Ouija board, and one of you thinks your granddad died at 62, the other one at 63 or 4, whatever it was, and the Ouija board says 65. And it turns out the Ouija board was right. And that just blows your mind, right?
On top of the thing moving itself, yeah, sure.
Okay, so first of all, that's wrong. The thing is not moving itself.
No, I mean,
Hang on.
No. The fact
Hang
that-
on.
I'm saying that itself, the fact that it was moving.
Hang on. You don't get to say the thing is moving itself. How did you prove that it's moving itself?
Right. I wasn't saying that it was moving itself. I was saying the
You
fact
literally said those words. You
Yeah, I heard those
literally
words as
said
well.
put them in the wrong order. I did order those words incorrectly. I agree, but that's not what I was meant to say. So.
Okay, so let me get to the point. You think your grandpa died at one age. Your cousin thinks that grandpa died at a different age. And the Ouija board gave you a different answer than either of you expecting. And you don't know how that could happen, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Now, first of all,
I definitely don't know how that could happen. All right.
sure. So now, first of all, the fact that you don't know how it happens means that you do not have sufficient reason to reach a conclusion. Period. End of sentence. This entire thing is over with the Ouija board. But I'll go further. If your brain is trying to go to 62 and your cousin's brain is trying to go to a different number, and the two of you both have your hands on the planchette, then sometimes we compromise. It's not, this isn't one person doing it. And how did you rule out? So the fact that the Ouija board got it right and you guys were wrong just means that you guys were conflicted over what the answer was, and the Ouija board appears to have gotten it right. Let's say that you went to a Ouija board, right? Let's say you went to a Ouija board right now, and you and I sat down, we put our hands on the planchette, and we started asking questions. And we said, hey, well, I was going to do the Super Bowl, but I already predicted that 100% accurately. And anybody who says otherwise is clearly lying, because I got everything wrong and predicted I would get it all wrong. But anyway, let's say you and I started asking it questions that neither of us knew. Like you and I sat down and we asked it questions about Jim, and the Ouija board got every question right. It just, even just yes or no questions or like a number, and the Ouija board just kept getting it right. What is the best explanation for that?
Therein lies the problem. That's where I'm at. I'm not saying that is.
That's where you're at. So you have a Ouija board that got everything right every time?
No. I'm saying that.
All right. So let's stick with my example.
I give you one, Matt. I give you one anecdote. I didn't give you the hundreds of anecdotes. I mean, that was basically.
Yes, but the plural of anecdote is not data. So let's just stick with the one anecdote, because you can have 5,000 anecdotes and not be any closer to the truth. What I asked was, hypothetically, if the Ouija board kept giving you right answers, what's the best explanation for that?
The best explanation for that is I don't know.
Congratulations! Now, you just admitted that in a scenario where a Ouija board is giving you absolutely 100% the correct answer over and over again, we don't know why that would occur. So in a less impressive circumstance, which is what you have, where a Ouija board isn't giving you the right answer all the time, then shouldn't your answer also be, I don't know?
Oh, my answer is definitely been I don't know, and there are definitely more impressive anecdotes that I had on deck. But yes, I agree.
Okay, so if we don't know, then you are not making an argument for believing in the supernatural. You're saying, here's a situation that happened, and I don't know what the explanation is.
Well, we don't have time to go through all the examples I have that.
It doesn't matter. That's the point, Duke. It doesn't matter. Do you have an example of the Ouija board being right every time? No, you don't. And if the Ouija board was right every time and the answer is I don't know, then if the Ouija board is right less than 100% of the time, the answer is still I don't know, right? If a Ouija board's only right 42% of the time, do you suddenly know what the explanation is?
No.
Okay.
This was what I was saying about the Ouija board was that it was the.
But here's the other problem that we have is that unless you have actually written down all the questions and all of the answers and things like ambient temperature, who the people were, what they think they know and what they don't know, and actually attempt to eliminate variables. The best you can do, no matter how many anecdotes you have, is I don't know, because you haven't tried to eliminate every single variable. So, for instance, you claim that you thought that your grandfather died at 62 and the other person at 64 and he really died at 65, or whatever the numbers were. That doesn't necessarily mean that you weren't subconsciously going to 65 for whatever reason. You may have just convinced yourself that you were wrong and that was right. We don't know. There's no way to show that. And because you haven't taken any time to turn all of these anecdotes into actual data by doing something that is actually scientific, like record everything. There's a reason why every scientist has, when they're doing experiments, they have a journal and they write everything they did down, and they try to capture as much data as possible, whether they think it's relevant to the experiment or not, just so that they can eliminate spurious things and get down to the actual thing that they're testing. So your thousands of anecdotes don't make any difference, simply because they're just your memory, and memory is fallible and memory is malleable, and you can remember things that actually didn't happen. And I bet you we could take some of your partners in your Ouija sessions, and they will have a completely different memory of some of the same sessions. So that's why it's anecdotes and not anecdata, and it doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
Okay. Well, of course, yes, it does, definitely. And I wanted to say that the point of the Ouija board was to let you know that was what opened my mind. I was 14 years old, so obviously, Jim, I'm not going to be any kind of scientist at that level. But it was just the point at which my mind that was closed before that, as to there is no God, that there's nothing, nothing out there that exists. After that, because
how does that open your mind? I mean, now when we're simply pointing out that really shouldn't have had any effect on you, on your logic and your reasoning whatsoever.
I have a bigger issue, and that is, you just now said that at that time you were like, there is no God and blah, blah, blah. And yet previously you said that you were a skeptic. That's not the skeptic position. Skepticism is not cynicism. It's not being opposed to something. It's not reaching a conclusion and saying there is no this. It is waiting until there is sufficient evidence before you become convinced. So if the Ouija board is giving you right answers, the right answer is, I don't know. The skeptical view is not, there is no God. That's not it.
Perhaps the nomenclature is off, but I will still say that those things can coincide. You can be, completely closed-minded, skeptical, and all that. But
no, you can't. No, you can't. No, you fucking can't. That's not what skepticism is. Skepticism is not being closed-minded.
Now, in fact, it has to be the opposite.
It is absolutely the opposite, as is science. The sciences is not about being closed-minded. It's about being open-minded. Modern skepticism, as advocated for decades by everybody, if you go to the JREF, the Amazing Meeting, everything else, it is, I am not going to be convinced, yay or nay, until this is demonstrated. There's nothing closed-minded about it. You don't know what skepticism is, and that's why you were duped by a Ouija board that led you to other things. What's your best evidence? I'll make this real easy, Duke. What is your best evidence for the supernatural, and how did you determine that the supernatural is the best explanation for that experience?
Okay, well, I appreciate the lexicography lesson. Now I know what skeptical means, and maybe I didn't before. That the other example I wanted to throw at you, and this is more towards the idea of, like I said, I'm tentatively attached to theism anyway. But as far as like Christianity goes, I just wanted to hear what your guys' idea were on the Shroud of Turin.
As far as I know, it's been proven a fake.
Yeah, the best tests have repeatedly shown that it's a fake. However, the best case for theism is that we don't have an explanation for the Shroud of Turin. At no point could the shroud ever be used to confirm Jesus or Jesus' existence or his resurrection or anything else. And here's the biggest problem. How could you ever prove that the cause of something is in fact supernatural? It's not possible currently. Until someone demonstrates that there is something supernatural and that supernatural can impact reality, and that they have a way to show that this particular supernatural explanation is the best explanation for an event, you're stuck. But the Shroud of Turin has been repeatedly shown to be a fraud.
100% agree. I just was curious of what you would have that might. I haven't heard anything that is definitively. Now, the carbon-14 is about the only thing that I've heard that's close to definitively. But I just wanted to hear what your thoughts on it were, because I agree that you can't prove the supernatural. That's impossible. We have no scientific method to do that. But my problem was that of all the attempts that I've heard to discredit or whatever, and what I've seen to the contrary, it seems to be such a back and forth that it doesn't seem like it's a settled.
Which means the explanation is what?
We don't know.
Congratulations.
All right. And I mean, I think it was debunked fairly quickly after it was first revealed to be a fake.
And Joe Nickel and others were involved, but yeah.
Yeah. From the paint or the dye or whatever it was to the material itself. I mean, there's lots of things that point to the Shroud of Turin just being a complete fake. Starting from, like I said, if I remember my history on the thing correctly, starting shortly after it was first shown. So, and it doesn't mean it wouldn't mean anything, even if it was in the right time period, with the right chemical compositions, et cetera, et cetera. It still wouldn't mean necessarily anything supernatural happened at all. It's not proof of anything.
Wow.
Here's a question, Duke.
Any paint or pigments or anything like that,
you haven't heard about paints or pigments related to. Have you bothered to Google Shroud of Turin debunked? Have you bothered to Google that?
Yeah, I have, and I watched a BBC thing about it that probably was, I don't know, a little bit less than credible. I don't know, but they had said in there that there was no evidence of any paints or pigments in there. So
when I Google Shroud of Turin debunked, the phrase that I asked you if you Googled, the first result is from Reuters in 2018. New forensic tests suggest Shroud of Turin is fake. There's another one from independent.co.uk, 628-year-old fake news. Scientists prove Shroud of Turin's not real. I mean, Shroud of Turin is fake. Bloodstain suggests Shroud of Turin isn't Jesus' burial cloth. Jesus Christ bombshell. Shroud of Turin, it's, But here's the question.
I've never heard anything about paint.
Pigment.
I haven't.
Yeah, I meant paint, pigment, whatever they're calling the coloring on there. I was not being entirely accurate with my words, and I apologize for that confusion. But yeah, going back that far.
So the Macron, according to Dr. Walter Macron and his colleagues, a 3-foot by 14-foot cloth depicting Christ's crucified body is an inspired painting produced by a medieval artist just before its first appearance in recorded history in 1356. And it goes through the examination, and the word pigment is there over the time. Macron postulated the shroud was painted in 1355. But set all that aside, here's the question, and I'm not asking it for you to answer, Duke. I'm asking it for you to think, and maybe other people can. So we have this Shroud of Turin, and it's being protected by the church. And they limit who can examine it and to what extent. It's a holy relic, and they don't want damage done to it or anything else. But if there were a way to show that it was real, why wouldn't the church show that it's real? That would change everything. And the fact that the church has not demonstrated that this is in fact real means that either they know it's not, there's no way for them to prove that it's real, and in either case, nobody else should believe it's real either.
I know you said you didn't want an answer from me, but can I just say that, of course, they're not going to be able to prove that it's real as far as resurrection goes, because once again, it's supernatural. We can't prove that, but they have opened it up to a limited degree it has been studied quite a bit, quite extensively.
Oh, picking and choosing who gets to study it and when, but on the occasions where they submitted it for testing, it failed. It not only failed to demonstrate that it's real, it's best dated to the 14th century or in that vicinity.
Yeah. Right. And that's reliant upon the scientific methods at the time, which
is also when it was discovered, when it first appeared. It first appears in like 1325, and they're like, oh, we've found the cloth that Jesus. Plus, it's also incredibly stupid because that's not how they would have wrapped a body in one big long sheet like that. And if you look at it, the front and the back meet so the person would have had to have a pointed head, pointed front to back like that. if you put a sheet over the front of me and the back of me, there's this big gap here where, you know, I don't have hair. So, but that gap.
I don't either. I understand.
Boom. Yeah.
Yeah. There's all kinds of problems with it.
I got to get going, Duke, because we got a lot of callers to get to today.
Yep.
Can I throw one more at you? I just had one more.
No, actually, but thanks. Call us back.
Well, thank you for your time.
Sure, appreciate it, Duke. Yeah, because it's like, wow, it's after 5 and we've got just loads of callers, and I want to make sure I get to them. It's one of those things where I was on an airplane once, and the dude in front of me is preaching to the dude across the aisle from him about the Shroud of Turin, and he has, you know, had like a envelope full of evidence he's just producing. So he's clearly like really hung up on the shroud. And I chimed in that I would be giving. I was flying to give a lecture, and I told him exactly where I would be and offered him free tickets to the event and all that stuff if he'd show up, and never heard from him again.
Yeah, well, you probably won't from people who don't want to stop believing for whatever reason.
Yeah. So we got Manuel in Ohio, who's been waiting for a little while. Manuel wants to know, I think it's what would be the better reason to believe in atheism over other beliefs, right? Welcome, Manuel.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, atheism isn't a thing that you believe in. It is the label that we put on people who do not accept theistic propositions. That's it. Atheism isn't an ism that you believe in.
So my regard to that question is like, why do you think atheism is better than any other religion? Or not better, like, why would you believe or not believe, but like, put your, like, you know?
Atheism is not a religion.
It's not a religion. It's not a belief. It's not something we believe in. We're not putting any stock or faith or trust in it at all. Atheism is the label for people who do not accept religious claims, just like bald is the label for people who don't have hair. Bald isn't a hairstyle.
Also,
or color.
My friend Rick, he's also atheist. He's been watching your show for like 7 years.
Okay, why didn't you ask Rick?
I wanted to ask you guys.
You just got our answer.
Okay.
Well, hold on. That wasn't the answer.
Yeah, atheism is not a religion. That's our answer.
It's not a belief. So ask your question again, and we'll answer it one more time.
Atheism better? All right. Why is atheism better than a religion?
Ah, that's easy. Because if the religions aren't true and you believe them, that's harmful and problematic, isn't it? If you believe in a religion and you're wrong.
I mean, if the religion is harmful, and
no. If the religion isn't true, then every moment you've spent believing it was a waste of your time. Every dollar you donated to it was a waste of your money. Everything that religion prevented you from doing on behalf of that religion was a limitation on your life that you don't have if you don't believe that religion. If your religion says, like Jehovah's Witnesses, that you can't get blood transfusions, they believe that's a good thing. But the truth is, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you are no longer bound to that. So you can get a blood transfusion. Beliefs have consequences.
No, I don't think all beliefs have consequences.
Well, you're fucking wrong. Every belief has a consequence. Every belief impacts your actions to some extent, and your actions have consequences for yourself and others. What belief do you have that you don't think has any consequences?
There's a belief to believe in, right?
I'm sorry, what?
If there is, you're saying that you understand at least that there's like something to believe in, right?
I don't even think we're talking about the same concept or topic right now. It's like you didn't even listen to what I said. So.
No, I heard you.
No, I know you heard me. I said you didn't listen. You need to understand the difference between hearing and listening.
I understood you though.
Okay, then why are you asking something that's not relevant to what I just said?
Because it's pretty relevant. You just played yourself, my guy.
It's pretty relevant, and I just played myself? Well, all right. Bring it on, buddy. Well, how did I play myself? Let's have some fun. Buckle up, bitches, because I have had 3 hours of sleep with a brand new puppy.
Oh,
Let's have some fun.
I love this.
Good, bring it.
All right, so look, you're saying that there's a belief, like you at least understand that there's a belief to believe in, right?
What do you mean? That sentence does not make sense. What do you mean there's a belief to believe in?
You understand that there's a faith I mean, because I don't believe in like Christianity or like Catholic.
I didn't ask that. Why are you going off on distractions? You just played yourself, bro. Let's get on it.
Because you're thinking that I'm
Show me up.
over here like questioning religion.
Show me up.
I think you played yourself and you know you did, so you're trying to prove to me that or prove to your audience that, you know, you still that.
Okay.
You're
You want
off topic.
the audience to make a vote on this about whether I played myself or whether you've actually been saying things that aren't clear?
Audience. Hey, you see my name on the board, though. Shout out to Cincinnati, man. Hey, shout out to Cincinnati.
So
Is that why you called? Is this like a Baba Booey? You want to get a clip that you can use where you can shout it to? Are you actually going to try and show me wrong? Because if you are not, Manuel, if you are not going to try to show that I'm wrong,
Bro.
I'm going to drop you like a bad habit.
You already showed that you're wrong.
All right. Bye, bitch. Bye, Felicia. Thanks for playing.
If you're going to make a claim, back it up and stay on topic. Don't try and weasel around like every other, so many theists we get.
It's a good thing.
It is.
Hey, Noah in Oregon, you are now on the air with Matt and Jim. How are you?
How's it going, Matt?
Well, pretty good, except that I evidently played myself.
Yeah.
Hey, you're a theist, right, Noah?
Well, yeah.
Noah, you're a theist, right?
But I am a skeptic now. Yeah.
I mean, did you hear the last call?
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Yeah, I laughed.
Did I play myself or what?
No, you didn't. No, that guy was calling for clout or something.
Sweet. All right, let's get on with it. How you doing?
So let me give you a little background on what just happened. So I became a skeptic recently because of Christianity and what it's become and who they've backed up. Good example of that is Donald Trump, the complete antithesis of Christ. And people are lying for him and everything else. So I became a skeptic. So then I started reading the Gospels, and a lot of them don't line up. The stories don't line up.
Yeah.
So before I let go of God, though, I wanted to discuss this with you. Dr. David Block was an astrophysicist that said that the Big Bang Theory, the contingencies that had to have taken place in the exact picoseconds were such precision when the Big Bang happened that it would be like hitting a 12 by 12 foot square block from 48 billion light years away, bullseye. Now,
So what?
To measure that, the chances of that happening would be far more than you winning the Mega Millions, correct? Like happening to where there's life form on
So
Earth.
what?
Because we have the perfect amount.
Hey, let me ask you, Noah. What are the odds that a God did it?
Go ahead.
What are the odds that a God did it?
That's a good question. And so
You're right. Hang on. Don't just say it. Don't just say it's a good question. Do you have an answer?
do I have an answer that God did it? No.
Do you have an answer of what are the odds that a God did it?
I really don't, but I would say the chances of it happening by chance versus.
Oh, so now you're going to make shit up. All right. So when you say you became a skeptic, I'll take you at your word. But here's the thing.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how unlikely Dr. David Block thinks something is. How do you know that the odds that he presented? How do you know that those odds are less than the odds that a God did it? If you don't know the odds that a God did it, you have no way to compare. And so you could say, let's say that the odds of a universe was 1 in 100, but the odds of a God were 1 in a million. So then the odds of this or physical origin of the universe is 1 in 100, then the God is 1 in a million. Then that's clearly the natural one bears out. But if it turns out that the odds of a physical explanation for the universe was 1 in a million, and the odds for a God was 1 in 100, then the God thing would win out. But if you don't know what the odds for God are, how can you talk about how incredibly unlikely the alternative is?
Well, okay, so let me discuss it. So I'm a big believer in science, just like you. I watch your shows. I'm a big fan. So it gets deep because I look back at the origin of the universe and how we have life form here and how perfect our Earth is from the sun and the moon.
The Earth isn't perfect, and none of those things are actually true. There's no such thing as precision.
Well, this is the only place we know there's life, correct?
So what? It's
so far, and so what? Yeah.
What you're saying is the one planet in our solar system that we have access to that is at the right distance and right features to provide to support life like us is the only life we know about. Well, big fucking deal. That's nothing.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Well,
and here's the other question that I have for you. So when you calculated these odds, the way you calculate odds is you take the number of possible occurrences versus the number of occurrences you're going to draw. For instance, if you're doing the odds for cards, right? So 54 cards, you're going to draw 5. That's how you determine the odds. So when you determine these odds, how many different universes do you know exist that you can compute those odds from?
I guess that's a good point.
It's one. The answer is one. We have exactly one universe. There's only one universe that we know of. That's why it was called universe. We have nothing else to compare it to. And that means that everything else is hypothetical.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got it confused with solar system. Okay. Yeah. There's one universe. Correct.
Yep.
So yeah, no, I've become a skeptic. And the biggest thing I've had with letting go of God and the existence of God is that very reason is what explains how everything was laid out here.
Okay, this is easy.
The Gospels don't line up.
I get it. The Gospels are irrelevant because whether Christianity is bullshit, whether or not there is a God, and even whether or not it happens to be the Christian God, the Gospel message. Set all that aside. You said that the last thing keeping you hanging on to God is somebody calculated the odds of the universe happening by natural causes, and that seems really unlikely to you. Well, tough shit. Because you don't know if it's more or less unlikely than a God. And so if the only thing that's keeping you believing in God is that nobody has been able to disprove God, well, that's a bad reason because the God proposition is unfalsifiable. It could be the case that nobody could ever disprove God. And at no point does that mean that it's reasonable to believe there is a God. Because now you're making what is called the argument from ignorance fallacy, or essentially the argument from personal incredulity, that you are justified in believing it until somebody proves you wrong. And that's not the way the burden of proof works. Somebody's got to prove God.
That's true. No. I am believing it. I am believing in it because it makes more sense to me, but that doesn't mean it's correct. So you have a good point. But let
me try something else. So let's take a deck of cards, right? Obviously. The odds of hitting a royal flush are 1 in 650,000 roughly, but that's also the odds of hitting any one particular hand. And if I said that the odds of hitting a 4 of clubs, 5 of hearts, 6 of clubs, 7 of clubs, ace of clubs was 1 in 650,000. What are the odds of me drawing that hand right now? It's 100% because that's the hand I just drew, right? Because that's the actual thing that I just did. Right. So whatever the odds against it were, the fact is that the odds of me drawing that hand were 100% because that's what I drew. So, the odds could be against something, and just because the odds are against something doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Yeah. And when we look at the number of worlds and planets out there that are within the Goldilocks zone, that are the right size and everything else, for life as we know it, then there are millions of opportunities out there for something to happen. And that's a problem, maybe even billions, depending on which study you look at. So, just because we haven't seen life anywhere else, well, that's a function of the fact that things only move at the speed of light. And our ability to detect things depends on how far away they are and what the strength of the signal coming in is. So again, you keep coming up against these odds, and we keep coming up with these, fairly easy to research and easy to figure out responses to everything that you're saying. So I don't understand why.
This is a great example from Jim that I love, and I'll because I always have a deck of cards handy, I'll do this, and maybe it'll make it clear. There is 5 cards, and there are 5 cards. Which one of those 2 hands is more likely from a shuffled deck?
They're even. What?
They are absolutely equal opportunity, equal odds of happening. Yes. That is counterintuitive to a lot of people, because most people will look at the ace through 5 of a spades hand and say, wow, that's awesome. But that's because we put significance on it. They're just bits of cardboard. They don't know anything about the hands in poker games and other stuff. But yes, you got it right. They're exactly as likely.
Yeah, they're exactly likely. That's correct.
Sure. So now, what you're doing though is you're suggesting that if we turn those two hands around backwards, and somebody says the odds of this hand is 1 in 573 million, that seems so unlikely that you're going to choose the other one. That's what you're doing.
Actually, Matt, so you're saying that the odds, because like I said, it's the odds of the universe being created and how perfect it was can be the same odds as proving God. So you can.
No, we're also asking you, how did you determine those odds? Right? Because in order to determine odds, right, you need to know how many permutations there are. And a deck of cards, there are 54 permutations. So the odds of drawing any one particular card are 1 in 54. But when we start doing them in combinations, those odds start going up. The problem is that we don't have any way of knowing how many other possible universes there are. So you can't calculate those odds. It's impossible.
But in any case, even if you could,
that's true.
You've already acknowledged that you can't calculate the odds of God. So you have no way to compare them. It would be like, let me take two hands of cards that you can't see, put them behind my back, and say, okay, in one hand I have 5 cards, in another hand I have 5 cards. Which one was more likely? It's like, how do you detect cheating? Yeah, the only reason we can detect cheating is because we have statistics to show what is likely in any given situation.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm believing in is a thing that makes more sense to me, but it's not really scientifically speaking more probable to someone else just because it makes more sense to me.
So you need to ask yourself, why does that make more sense to you? Because if it turns out that you don't have a good reason and it makes more sense to you, then you have uncovered a flaw in your thinking, and that needs to be expunged.
Yeah, correct. Especially after seeing what we've seen with the Christianity and Donald Trump and everything else. I couldn't believe it.
That's not relevant.
Yeah.
I have no interest in the Donald Trump and Christianity conversation. But
no, neither do I.
On that note, we got to get on to some other calls. I appreciate it. Noah, thanks for calling.
Yeah, you guys have a good one.
You too.
You too. All right, so we have an argument for God's existence from Michael in California. Welcome to the show. You're on with Jim and Matt. Please present you can say hello first if you want, but if you have an argument for the existence of God, I'd love to hear it. Excuse me.
Hey, gents. Well, first off, I don't want to present this as if this is going to be a debate topic where we argue for any specific argument for the existence of God. Basically I wanted to kind of just, quickly look at both of our epistemic, outlooks. So I take it you're a skeptic, correct?
So I'm confused because the call screener put in here that said, you have an argument.
Okay.
Stop interrupting me or I'm just going to hang up.
Go ahead.
The call screener says that you have an argument for God's existence. And then when we put you on the air, immediately you want to ask about whether I'm a skeptic or what my epistemology is. Have you got an argument for the existence of God or not?
Okay. But will you allow me to frame the argument before I give it to you?
Frame the argument before you give it to me.
Give us the argument. The
framing. Do you have an argument or not?
Okay. So you want a deductive argument? Is that what you're telling me?
We want an argument. Don't care what type.
I want whatever fucking argument you've got rather than the stalling.
I want to give you an argument against physicalism.
I don't care. That's not relevant, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, it is because all of your arguments are based on naturalism and physicalism.
No, they're fucking not. First of all, you just said all of my arguments. I don't necessarily have to have any arguments. All I have to do is not accept that there's a God, and to show that these arguments for the existence of God have not met their burden of proof. So yet you have twice, shut up. You have twice now deflected to what I do or don't believe. Tell me what you believe and why, or you're gone.
Okay, I believe that God is actually a rational concept to hold. I believe I have a concept of God, and I believe I have quite a few logical arguments that I can prove it with. I mentioned one being the argument of consciousness, but I guess we could go down that route if you'd like.
Argument from consciousness.
Find your God. Define God.
Okay, yeah, perfect. That's what I was talking about, framing the argument, Matt. That's what I wanted. Let's pretend we're on bar stools, out on 6th Street. Or
no, let's not. Let's pretend like we're on a show with 5 other people waiting to talk and stop wasting time.
Okay, I'm not wasting time. Okay, so
you are.
God is going to.
And you saying you're not wasting time was also a waste of time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that series of statements was a waste of time. Okay, so what I'm going to define God as a mind-like entity that has the ability to direct physics in a teleological direction.
Okay, prove it.
Hang on.
It's vague, but so yeah, you're trying to avoid.
Hang on.
You want me to define it more specifically?
I would like so first of all, I don't know what mind-like means, and I don't know what it means to be able to direct physics in a teleological direction. What's a teleological direction? Does that mean you're directing physics towards Earth or towards teleology as a subject?
Yeah, I would definitely, part of my whole argument will definitely include, in trying to support the soundness of the soundness of the premises and the validity of the argument, will include that it's impossible for us to exist without some teleology in the natural world. I reject the supernatural and natural distinction. I do hold to skepticism, but I'm all basically a rationalist and an empiricist.
I just asked you, what the hell, Michael, stop.
Yeah,
I said I don't know what mind-like entity means, and I said I don't know what the ability to direct physics in a teleological direction means, and you provided zero explanation for either. So what is mind-like entity?
Okay, what I would say a mind-like entity would be some yeah, this is going to be a hard one. I mean, because I'm trying to frame it in.
No, it's not. We're done.
Yeah, we're done. If you can't define it, you don't know it.
I asked you to define your God. You gave a word salady, mind-like entity that has the ability to direct physics in a teleological direction. And I said, I don't know what mind-like means, and I don't know what direct physics in a teleological direction means. And it turns out neither do you. Yep. If you did, you'd have had it ready. Better bring your A game.
Yeah. And for those of you who aren't familiar with teleology and the definition, it's the explanation of phenomena in terms of the purpose they serve rather than of the cause by which they arise. So I don't know how you get a teleological direction out of any definition for teleology that I can find. So you have a long way to go to understand your own position, which is just kind of funny.
On that note, though, we're going to move on because we got Patrick in Florida. You're on with Jim and Matt. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm exhausted, but I'm, evidently I can do this when I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Well, happy Valentine's Day to you at any rate.
Thanks. I hope everybody who cares about Valentine's Day is having a wonderful one.
All right. Well, I guess let's get right into it.
Cool. You wanted to challenge me on something I said, evidently. So.
Yes. Like I had spoke with you before, and you said there's no science evidence of God. But I think there's a problem with that, and I'd like to say why if you give me an opportunity.
Okay, go.
So what I'd like to say is that, if you say no science evidence of a supernatural God, the science doesn't investigate the supernatural, so that's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow.
Well, okay. Now I'm willing to go with you there. Are you advocating for a non-supernatural God?
Yes, I'm Patrick the Pantheist from Florida, but
that's not. So if your position is that there's a non-supernatural God, you're welcome to defend that. But when I was saying there's no scientific evidence of a God, I'm talking about supernatural gods because I'm not aware of any non-supernatural thing that would actually qualify as a God.
Okay, well, how can you say that though? That's my question.
I open my mouth and I exhale oxygen from my lungs, which goes across my vocal cords. That's how I can say it.
But this is what I'm saying there. Science doesn't investigate the supernatural.
No, that's an incorrect phrasing. That's an incorrect phrasing.
But that's not what I said.
Science is unable to investigate the supernatural because we don't know what it is. If we had any idea of what it was, and every time you try and nail somebody down on a definition of it, we can't get anywhere with it. So it's not that it doesn't, it's that it can't because nobody knows what it is.
But none of that matters because you're advocating a non-supernatural God, which means it's a God that we can in fact investigate, right?
Yes, I would say we've gone over this a little bit before. I said we would have to assign some kind of God attributes to say that the universe was a God, and they're investigating it, consciousness, they've got different theories. We've talked about OR theory before, and you said you had a guy on the show that knew Roger Penrose. We talked a little bit about that.
I don't care what we talked about in the past. Get to define. I'm going to hang up on you if you don't stop talking. Get to defining your non-supernatural God so that we can address it. That's Jim's objection. That's my objection. Define your God, and we'll be happy to talk about it. But if you keep going on about what we talked about before, we will not speak again.
Okay, I got you. Well, I would say to define God, it's simply God equals the universe. And how you deduce that is that's a natural God. Everything we see in science is explained through natural phenomena. So the pantheists would be cool with that, as am I. And then they're investigating consciousness. The universe, some people believe, exhibits consciousness. I'm trying to. Okay, go ahead.
You defined you defined the universe and just said it's a natural God. How do you know that? What properties does the universe have that make it a God?
That's what I was trying to say. A God would exhibit consciousness. The universe.
How do you know that? How do you know that a God would be consciousness? But the universe isn't conscious, so you lost already. The universe is not conscious.
Well, so if scientists are currently investigating that.
Well, then when the scientists show that the universe is conscious, then maybe you'll have a point. But right now, the universe is not conscious.
Well, string theory has not been proven either.
Correct. And am I sitting here advocating for string theory? Is string theory even remotely relevant to this conversation?
It's a legitimate inquiry in science and
Did I advocate string theory, Patrick?
No, but I'm trying to explain why.
No, you're not.
Even this pantheism and panpsychism, and I feel like you're not allowing me the opportunity.
So here, let me try and put it another way. So there are quote unquote scientists who are also investigating flat Earth, right?
Not really.
Does that mean it's legitimate?
Did you just say not really?
No,
are you fucking kidding me? There's a whole documentary about people out there who are trying to.
Yeah. And some of them are scientists trying to scientifically prove it. So just because they're a scientist trying to prove something doesn't mean that it's even remotely possible.
If a God is conscious and the universe has not been yet shown to be conscious, how could you say that the universe is God? Oh,
poor guy.
I don't know. We might have lost all of the call screen thing. So I want to give him a second to get back on here. So in the meantime, let me try and make this clear for everybody who isn't Patrick. If you want to define God and you want to say the universe is God, you have to say, here are characteristics of a God, and the universe has these characteristics. And when you do that, if you show that these in fact are characteristics of a God and the universe has those characteristics, then you are well on your way to showing that the universe is a God. But if you say a God has these characteristics and you can't show that the universe has them, then you're not on your way to demonstrating God. Are you back, Patrick?
Yes, sir.
So,
can you hear me?
You say the universe is God and gods are conscious, but the universe has not yet been shown to be conscious, correct?
No, I mean that consciousness is a very,
Patrick,
the hard problem.
that was a yes or no question. Has the universe been demonstrated to be conscious?
I believe it has.
Well, I don't care what you believe. I care about why. And so why do you think the universe has been demonstrated to be conscious?
I've read a little bit of the newer sciences like OR theory. I feel like, have you read that at all? Or
Goodbye.
Yeah.
If the universe had been shown to be conscious, Patrick and anybody else who agrees with Patrick, that would be on the front page of every newspaper. It would earn every scientific award. Well, I've read some papers that show that maybe somebody someday might be able to show that the universe is conscious. Well, when they do, call us back. Until then, you are wasting time. I have a call for Cliff, or from Cliff for Jim. So I'll just shut up and stare at the puppy.
Wait a minute. Someone's not
sleeping.
getting a fair deal.
the puppy's sleeping right here next to me. But yeah.
All right.
Hey, Cliff, thanks for calling.
Hey, Cliff.
Hi, I'd like input from both of you, actually. Just very quick background. I've been sort of engaging on the Kalam with a bunch of theists over the last, year. And recently, I brought up okay, but how does that thing exist that doesn't have a start? And then they're like, oh, well, you don't know about the argument from contingency. And I'm like, well, okay, so I go look up the argument from contingency, which is basically the Kalam just phrased a different way. But
no, it's not.
It's not okay. Well, I
understand how you got there, so I'm going to let you keep going. But because I'm going to get email because of what you just said. You had a caller come on and say that the Kalam is just a rephrasing of the contingency argument. That's not true.
Well, would you say that they're at least related?
Only in the sense that contingency is defined as something that is contingent upon something else, and that can be viewed in the same context as something that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. So the thing that begins to exist is contingent. But the contingency argument, or the classifications of arguments that are arguments from contingency, are not just a simple reframing. There's subtle things that are different, but it's far too much to go into here. So, but keep going with whatever you got.
Fine. So the real crux of the question now is, we have one object, which is the universe. Things that come into existence, quote unquote, in the universe are just reformulations. And so all of the intuitions about things coming into existence, that we observe things coming into existence, is actually really problematic if the universe is the object that came to existence and all we're seeing is rearrangements within the universe.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was because I just was. I watched the debate that you had a few weeks back, and I was just curious if you thought that would be an effective attack against the Kalam.
Yeah, I used a part of that in my debate with Dean, but of course we're debating the Kalam itself. And my biggest problem with the Kalam is that it's a deductive argument, and the definition of universe, which would be the local presentation and not necessarily the entire cosmos, although some people might disagree with that. But yeah, it's everything we know seems to have a beginning. It's a question of what do you define as a beginning. If you have an acorn, for instance, an acorn is going to give rise to a oak, if I have my correct seed and tree correct. At what point does the seed become the oak, right? And that is kind of the question we're asking. At what point do you say, okay, this is no longer an acorn, it's an oak? Because at some point they're kind of both. Where is that?
I would say at every point.
Yeah.
From the beginning, at some point it stops being an acorn, but it was always an oak.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah. Go with that one too. So
just like at some point you stop being a baby, but you were always a human.
Right.
But is that a meaningful distinction? Like philosophically, it's a meaningful distinction, but in terms of it's just matter changing its form.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree with you that the intuitions that we have are formed from our experience in something in the universe, which all the best evidence shows what we see is matter and energy rearranging and exchanging and things like that. However, the Kalam is not just, it's not about intuition necessarily. And while I think that the thing that you're talking about could be used as part of a reasonable rebuttal against the Kalam, I don't know that it gets to the point. I don't know how effective it'll be, but at the end of the day, the Kalam is very simple and useless, because the Kalam is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. That's premise number one. And the only reason it says that is because they're going to try to claim that there's something that did not have or did not begin to exist. I don't know what their justification is for that, but the second one is the universe began to exist. So premise one, everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. I don't know that that's true. And I don't know how you could make that statement, because we haven't been able to look at everything. And I don't know how you determine which things began to exist and which things didn't begin to exist. So premise one is a problem. Premise two, the universe began to exist, is also a problem, because what you mean by universe, the local presentation of the universe, certainly that we can attribute to say our local presentation of the universe began apparently at the singularity, and expanded, but that doesn't mean that the substance of the universe began to exist then. It doesn't mean it began to exist at all, other than perhaps that's when time in our local presentation was there. And the conclusion of the Kalam is, therefore, the universe has a cause for its existence. And so the argument doesn't include the word God, doesn't talk about God. It's only extra stuff they add. So while I think you're onto something really good, if you were having a casual conversation about our intuitions, because that first premise, everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence, that is our intuition that you're talking about, right? And to show that we're making an intuition here, but not demonstrating that it's true, that it's not deductive. There's just a big inference at the beginning. You might have something there. I just don't know how effective it's going to be.
Well, that's all I had. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Thank you. All right. So we have like 12 minutes left, give or take. I'm willing to go a little long if we need to.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of calls. And so I want to try and get to this, because we always try and show priority to theist callers. Yeah. Todd in Colorado has a suggestion that the scientific method is not the only method to observe reality, but I don't know that anybody said it was. So welcome to the show, Todd. You're on with Jim and Matt.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Hey Matt, I just want to say I'm a really big fan, and believe it or not,
well, we'll fix that right away.
about 10 years ago, believe it or not, I was actually like a gospel singer and have been on like MTV and shit like that. And I actually started watching your debates to help maybe figure out some questions I was having about Christianity. And then I read Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, and I read Atlas Shrugged, and all of a sudden just this God notion evaporated for me. And so for about 10 years, I was angry atheist. However, in the past 6 months, I've kind of come back to some ideas about God in my life. I thought it'd be good to talk with you guys. So for me, God evaporated whenever I applied a scientific method. I couldn't compartmentalize them down and observe them in this constant way, like make an experiment. But it's like now I realize that maybe I'm starting to experience spiritual things, but using another method of observation that's internal. And I'll give you an example. Like, we know that we can experience acceleration because force equals mass times acceleration. We have this.
No. That's not why we experience. Defining what force equals mass times acceleration, that tells us nothing about why we experience acceleration. I mean, you can go further than that by saying that, we have a mass and there's a force, but this whole thing about all right, go ahead, continue.
No. Anytime I come across those little things that might be wrong, definitely shout out and let me know. Because
well, that's going to happen. I mean, everybody knows that's going to happen long before they called in.
I like how you work. It's cool.
But so the thing is,
Anyway,
here's the thing. There are plenty of different methods that one could use to evaluate facts in the world. You could use the scientific methods, and I'll put an S on there. There's not a scientific method, but there's many. But those methods are rigorous investigations with standards specifically designed to minimize the likelihood of being incorrect. That's what the scientific methods seek to do. Other methods could be, I could flip a coin. That has no guarantee or likelihood of being correct. I could consult a Ouija board. I could investigate by rolling the bones. I could investigate by wishing, by praying. And none of those have demonstrated any sort of efficacy that makes them even comparable to scientific investigation. So the scientific methods are the single most consistently reliable method that we have of describing reality. And if somebody believes something and they want to say, oh, I have a method that's not scientific, but it's a different method, how do we tell how good their method is? Wouldn't we have to compare it to science?
Yeah, that's a great point. I would just have to look at the measure of value in their life that it was bringing, and of course that it might not have anything to do with this standard of scientific truth. But I guess what I wanted to suggest, and even though that I can't describe to you what exactly this method is because it seems so deeply personal for every individual on the planet, that it seems to me that there's a way that I can observe this that's internal for me, and it doesn't necessarily align up with all things scientific. And I totally agree with you about these tried and true methods, but I was just curious what you thought about that.
I'm curious about what you mean by true for me.
Sure. So like I was saying earlier, we quote unquote, Matt, force times mass equals acceleration is how I observe acceleration. So, but how
that's how you describe acceleration.
Right, exactly. Thank you. But maybe there's also an internal way, like I have a 3-year-old son, where if I were to put emotional force on him to use his little potty, there's a repulsion that happens. And again, this isn't an equation I'm giving for emotions or neural activity, but I noticed that for instance, if you guys, we all heard the same song, we would all have a very...
Well, now I'm confused because it seems like you're equating emotional force you're applying to your son to use the potty is the same as the force of gravity, me dropping a lens wipe, in some way, shape, or form. And both of those equal or can be described by the equation force equals to mass times acceleration. So I'm confused at how you're getting the emotional piece out of this.
Yeah, so thanks for asking. I guess, again, what I would like to suggest is that there's an internal way to observe reality that seems very deeply personal to every individual, and that God could be experienced that way.
Well, you stated that, and that's what we're investigating. So when we just started talking about it, and you said, we experience acceleration, force equal to mass times acceleration, which is really the description of force, not acceleration. I had it backwards. And then you started to apply that as if we could apply F equals MA to the emotional force you're applying to your son to go potty train. And I don't understand how we go from a physical force that we can actually feel and measure to an emotional force. A force doesn't even kind of work for that, although we use the word.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Those methods do not work internally is what I meant to say. And so before I stopped there, all three of us could hear a song, for instance, and all of us would have a very different internal response to that song. So what I think I'm beginning to understand is that it seems like for experiencing God, before he evaporated under this method that I was reading in these books and hearing under your debates, which I fucking love, by the way, big fan of this, so you guys know. But I guess I just want to suggest that I feel like I'm sensing God in a way that I didn't expect him to. I thought he would line up with this.
So this internal method that you're advocating, which is basically feeling, How do you tell how accurate that feeling is? What method do you use to tell how accurate the feeling is?
Right, exactly. And that's where I'm unable.
I asked a question and you just said, right, exactly. I think you got it, which is why you said right, exactly. But the answer to the question is you don't have any way to tell how those accurate those feelings are. And so that means it's not a method at all. A method has within it some way to demonstrate efficacy. And so what you have is not a method, you have a wild ass guess.
Right, right.
Right. And we know that emotions are affected by things like hot and cold. And I wish I could find this experiment, but they did an experiment where the only variable they changed in an interview process was whether or not the interviewer was holding a hot or cold drink. And that had an effect on whether or not that the interviewer thought the interviewee was going to be a good employee and whether or not they would hire him. And we know that if we go even beyond that, just hot and cold, being too hot will make you cranky. Being too old will have an effect. Too cold will have an effect on you emotionally. So given that emotions have very real, very demonstrable external things can have a demonstrable effect on your emotions, why are emotions even remotely reliable on top of what Matt just said, right?
Right. Yeah. And they very well could not be, but I guess another question I would have for you. Do you? I
can't, Todd.
That method is
Todd.
Sorry.
I can't take any more questions. I got 2 more calls I want to get to, and we're already at time, which means we're going over.
Right.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure. Call us back another week. I'd love to talk some more, but we're out of time or running close.
Sure, guys. Love it.
Yeah. So there's 2 calls left, and I'm going to take what I suspect is the shorter of the 2. Right away. And that's Alan in New York, who wants to ask about why we shouldn't permit cherry picking of the Bible. Is that right, Alan?
Yeah, that's basically it.
And there's a really good reason
about that.
Because if the Bible is the word of God, which is what those people believe, then you don't get to pick and choose. Right?
So you would have an issue with people revising how they think about things, just as we have throughout the years.
I have no problem with people revising how they think, but they need to make an argument. There are people who will and do make an argument that this particular passage in the Bible should not be taken literally, and they'll make an argument for that. Or they'll make an argument that this particular passage in the Bible shouldn't be considered at all, that this is an interpolation and a fiction. Like, for example, Mark 16, verses 9 through 20. I'm not telling people what to believe, and I'm asking people what they believe, and then they explain why. But if somebody says, I like this part of the Bible and this part of the Bible, but not this part of the Bible, then they're basing it on their own preference. If they don't have some justification for why they're picking and choosing, then they're screwed, because the Bible, you can't have Jesus without the prophecies for Jesus. You can't have salvation without the original sin. These things must be taken together. And so they got to come up with some other explanation for it.
Right. So okay. I'm very ignorant with the Bible, but you're saying things, they all come together, and so they have to provide an explanation. Just another really quick thing, and that is just as we in the past, for instance, Thomas Jefferson. I don't know if you consider him a good man. He's a great influence.
I don't know whether or not he was a good man.
Okay. All right.
I don't, really quickly, Alan, I don't look at people and go, that's a good person, that's a bad person. I think we're all capable of both good and bad. I think it's a mistake to summarize the entirety of someone's character.
Right. And so would you say there are good things in the Bible? Clearly, right? You would say that.
Sure, I have many times.
Okay. All right. And
there's also many good things in, The Lord of the Rings. There's many good things in Dune. There's many good things in
the Satanic Bible, and in the Quran, and in the Constitution, and in the notes that I wrote down from yesterday. Yep. There's lots of good things everywhere.
Okay, and that's really all I had. I don't waste your time. Thanks.
Right. Appreciate it, Alan. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right, last call for today. Chris is calling from California, believes in the supernatural and that there's something out there that reads our minds. Chris, welcome. You get to finish off the show with me and Jem. Please, please, please tell us. You can kind of summarize what you believe again, although I think we kind of did. But the big question is, why on earth would you believe there's something out there reading our minds and controlling our future?
Hi, Matt, longtime listener, first-time caller, and trust me, I don't want to believe it, but unfortunately, I had to experience it for the better half of the last year. So I was atheist my whole life as well. I don't know, can you still hear me?
Yep, sure can.
All right, I was atheist my whole life as well, but then I had an experience like I was having like a conversation at lunch with some coworkers, or at least I thought they were coworkers, and they were discussing like how would you convince someone to be a theist or something, and I was like, I don't know, I wouldn't do it because I'm atheist, and I was like, but how I think you might do something like that, and we started discussing all these hypothetical situations, and while I was discussing these
Okay, can we go back to a second? You said that these were people you thought were coworkers. Could you explain that?
I didn't want to interrupt either. I wanted to let him get there, and I'm glad we were going to get there, but I did note it down. How do you said you were having lunch with coworkers, and then you said, at least I thought they were coworkers. What do you think they are now?
My coworkers, they sounded like my coworkers. I worked with them, but during this conversation,
well, so I'm still stuck on this because what it sounds to me like is you had a break with reality and that you need to go and get professional help.
Yeah.
Kind of irrelevant to what I'm saying.
No, sir.
No.
So you said that you thought they were coworkers, and I asked you, what do you think they are now?
I said I was working with them. They looked like my coworkers. They sounded like my coworkers.
Why won't you answer the question that I've asked you 2 times? What do you think they are now?
Former coworkers.
So you were having lunch with coworkers, and now you think they're former coworkers.
That's right, because I no longer work there, Matt.
Okay, so basically, you got sloppy, because the real thing you should have said was, I was having lunch with coworkers, not I thought they were coworkers, but you were having lunch with your coworkers, right?
Right.
So why did you say you thought they were coworkers? I'm having a conversation with Chris. I thought it was Chris. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you say that?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Matt.
Wait, what? No, stop.
On the
You don't get to say that's exactly what you're saying. I'm telling you this makes no fucking sense and I would like an explanation for it. Why on earth, if you were having lunch with coworkers, would you ever say, I was having lunch with coworkers, at least I thought they were coworkers, which is what you said.
Matt, it's irrelevant to the topic.
You know what's irrelevant? This whole call. Bye.
Yep.
Can't believe I waited for that.
Yeah, neither can I. We've had a couple of calls like that where we were like, oh, this should be a good call. Then it kind of goes off into someplace really, really weird and strange. Just like that one.
I was really hoping, and that's why I jotted it down in my notes. And I was like, let him go, because I didn't know where he was going to go. I thought he was going to get to this, maybe they were angels. Maybe they were, lizard people. Maybe they were something else. And that's the supernatural thing that I experienced over the year. But nope, it was just, I was sitting around with coworkers. At least I thought they were coworkers. What's that mean? It means they were coworkers and I don't work there anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Unless his English is Chris's second language, that was a break.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And
we didn't find proof for God once again.
It's kind of disappointing. Maybe next week.
You'd think on Valentine's Day, if God really loved us. I mean,
oh my gosh, that's perfect. Why the hell didn't we say that earlier? For God so loved the world that he skipped Valentine's Day and sent a bunch of people with really bad arguments.
Yeah. Not even his best. All right.
So first of all, thank you to everybody who tuned in and watched, and appreciated everyone's patience. The puppy's asleep and has been asleep for like most of the last 45 minutes, which means I need to take him outside. But I just want to say there's a lot that's been going on, and we appreciate not just the people who are calling in, and I get it. Not every call is going to go really well. Somebody in chat saying, sorry, you didn't let him finish. Well, bring your A game. If you're upset that somebody didn't get to finish because they said something as ridiculous as, I was having lunch with coworkers, at least I thought they were coworkers, and when Jim and I asked for clarification, we get a bunch of nonsense, you didn't bring your A game. If you don't bring your A game, why should I put 5 other people on hold for an hour?
Yeah. And this isn't like he misspoke, right? I mean, I did that earlier with calling paint pigment, or calling pigment paint. And that's fine. That just doesn't seem to me to be that type of mental error, right? At least I thought they were coworkers. In no way implies former coworkers. So
yeah, it's really weird. Somebody wanted me to hold the puppy up. There's no way I'm going to hold the puppy up. He's a good sized, 22-pound puppy, but
yeah.
All right. So it's been a wild week, and we're in the middle. Jim and I are here in Austin. I love saying Jim and I. I do.
We're almost twins.
We're almost. Jim has hair.
Yeah.
But we're here in Austin, and I want to remind everybody who's in the Austin area or in Texas at large that the governor's declared essentially a disaster for every county because of this unusual winter freezing storm. Now, for people who live in places where they get winter storms all the time, what we're dealing with, not a big deal. I mean, there's not even a 1/4 inch of snow on the ground right now, but there is ice. And the thing to remember is that Austin specifically and Texas generally doesn't have infrastructure to deal with it, which we've pointed out at the beginning of the show. So if you are in the area, please exercise some caution. Continue the social distancing and wearing the masks and all that stuff, but please exercise caution if you have to go out at all. And if you are part of the atheist community of Austin, there's a number of Facebook pages that we pointed out earlier. There are also discussion groups. If you're in the Austin area and you need help or assistance during this frozen area, reach out, because you may find that there's somebody in there. Like I can't hop in the truck and go anywhere right now because of the puppy, but there may be somebody who can come and help you out. And I love the fact that there's lots of delivery services and everything else, but no matter how much I disagree with or am frustrated by bad arguments from callers, I genuinely appreciate the people who are calling in, and I want all of you to be well and alive and safe and happy. You don't just necessarily get to be happy with the way the call went, but happy in general. I'm in favor of it, and we look forward to seeing all of you next week. There's a massive crew behind the scenes that have done all the work, including chat that you can't see, like when I had to tell everybody shift focus to Jim so that I can go pick up the poop that I smell, which was about 9 minutes into the show and not 20 minutes into the show.
Keep drinking, Puck. No, we're not done yet, Puck. Keep going.
Yeah. How many got done, Puck? Oh my God. That guy's a Puck and Cola-holic. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care of yourself. Until then, bye-bye.